Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Simon from Social Flight, and I'm here to host this really interesting webinar that we have this evening. I'm joined by Raul Canales and Peter Elliott from Bendix King. We've got a great presentation tonight on using Foreflight and also the other navigators so that you've got the other EFBs with the AeroNav and Avidyne GPS Navigators. Now, I'm a huge fan of this product. I've got it in my A36 Bonanza that we use here at Social Flight, and I also am using it in what you can see behind me. I'll lean the other way. Our T51 Mustang that we're building here. And so huge fan of these products, and we'll talk as we go through the presentation about why they are such a good fit for so many cockpits, and also the flexibility that they give you by being able to integrate with an iPad. And again, we're going to use that. We'll talk about how we're going to use that in our Mustang as well. And so again, I'd like to bring everyone on the line now. We've got Raul and Tom and Peter all coming on. Let's bring them in. We're also going to be joined this evening by Tom Harper from Avidyne, who will be with us, especially towards the end of the presentation, where they can help field some questions if you happen to have specific questions about looking at it for your aircraft or anything else like that. And we'll use all the experts at our disposal here. Welcome, guys. I will turn it over to both of you. I'm going to shut off my webcam. We'll go through that demo. And again, we'll bring everybody on for questions towards the end.
Okay, so I'll take it over from here, and I want to let you guys know that this is very, very brief. Basically, what our intent is to give you an idea of the partnership that we have entered in with Avidyne, whereby we are selling their product branded as an AeroNav. You can see on your screen there the brand for Bendix King versus Avidyne. What this does is it allows you to be able to buy either from an Avidyne or Bendix King dealer. Same model or same product. You can just get it from a different network if you want to do that. So we are today going to be using the AeroNav 800, which is the IFD 440, and the idea here is you can buy small glass. You can buy this 2.66 inch navigator and actually get big glass out of it. In fact, this product allows you to use the IFD 100 app to sync up to 2 iPads. Now, we're not going to be using 2 iPads in this demo. We're going to be using one, but this is the model we're going to be using here, the smaller one. And so you'll be able to see how we can interface or interact between, in this case, the EFBs and the actual product, and be able to make some changes. So fairly simple demonstration, but I'm going to also show you through Tom that there is a vast array of information out there for you to be able to look up and to get lots of information. There's lots of training videos and resources for you should you decide to go with this for your airplane. So with that, let me go ahead and get going here. You should be able to see an AeroNav 800 IFD 440 here on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, you should be able to see an iPad. So I'm sharing my screen right now, and I have a very simple flight plan from Goodyear going to Las Vegas through 2 points. And we're basically going to send this to the product by pressing on the little airplane. I don't know if you can see this right in the middle. I'm going to press on it. Let me use my mouse here. I'm going to press on this little airplane here to be able to send this on to
Let's go to the stored route page. Go to the stored route page so you can see it come in.
Yep, right here it is.
There we go.
And you'll see it pop in. And we're going to send it to the panel. And there it is, KGYR to LAS. We're going to take that in. We're going to activate it. And then activate the flight plan to get going. And then when we do that, you're going to see that in the iPad that has Foreflight, you see this turn into a little airplane, which basically means that they're synced. So at this point in time, this is a simulator on the right-hand side that you're looking at. So it is pretending at this point that it's actually flying the route. So you can see the airplane moving. It's going to take off soon, and it's going to be on its way. So I'm actually going to accelerate that. I'm going to do 2x, not too terribly fast, but we're going to go faster. In the meantime, I'm going to switch over on the iPad over to the IFD 100 app. And so here you can start to see now where you have one product, which is the IFD 800, and the iPad actually allows you to be able to use multiple screens and see what you otherwise wouldn't. So a 2.6-inch screen isn't going to give you the visibility, say, that you would out of an iPad. But the iPad doesn't know any better. It thinks it's an IFD, so it's going to act as one. And you can, there's literally nothing really you can't do on the iPad with some few limitations that you couldn't do on the IFD or AeroNav. Back to Foreflight. You can see now that we're flying to our first waypoint. I'm actually going to change this. We're going to do the rubber band thing here and switch it to a different spot. And then we're going to update the IFD from Foreflight by sending that to the panel. And I'm going to go back to route so you can see it come in and sending that to the panel. And there it is. It popped in. We're going to act here. Now here's a word of caution. Because this is a trainer, we are going to go back to the beginning. And so you will see the airplane come back to Goodyear in this case. But if we were actually flying, it would actually make the changes in flight. 500. Oh, got to give it an altitude. Okay, so you can see on the left-hand side, rather the right-hand, well, here, I'll show you. You can see the two different maps moving. One in the IFD/AeroNav, and the other one in Foreflight as the airplane does its takeoff. And now you can see on both products how you can have a coordinated view. Tom, any other screens that you think would be useful for folks to see? What are more popular ones?
You got the SVS tab there that shows the kind of the 3D exocentric synthetic vision. You show it on the iPad there, nice and big screen. You can pen zoom that for range. If you hit the frequency button on the iPad over in the lower left, it'll nominate frequencies, so you can highlight a frequency, just reach up and touch it, and it'll move it into the standby, and it'll immediately share my cam so I can talk. See, here we go. I'll be happy.
Yeah, I'm going to bring everybody on now so we can, and for those people in the audience, feel free to post some questions and we'll use that because this is meant to be an open discussion and also to talk to you about how these products work. So go ahead, Tom, and then I'll share some of my experiences as well with these units.
Absolutely. So just, notice when you entered the frequency in the standby, it immediately updated into the standby on the panel unit. And then you'd reach over on the panel unit and hit the flip-flop and put it into the active.
Yeah.
So anyway, you can clear out that screen, but that's just one of the things you can do is frequency nomination. You can load the approach from the iPad. You can go direct to from the iPad, and you can edit the flight plan on the iPad and send it back to Foreflight if you want.
Let's talk about this. Why don't we back up a little bit, because I mean, one of the things that is so interesting is we're really talking about two different ways that the iPad integrates with the AeroNav and Avidyne navigators. One of them has to do with all of your pre-flight planning, and the other one has to do with how you actually fly with it when you're airborne. So if we could step back for a moment, having to do with the flight planning itself. I mean, we were talking about this just before we even came online. There's, obviously Foreflight, biggest one that's out there as far as EFBs, but there's a wide variety of other products out there as well. I happen to use FlyQ quite a bit, and that's what myself and both my boys that are also studying to be pilots use. And same integration, the ability for you to do your flight planning and to figure out what makes sense and then import it and do the same thing when you have to have changes as well en route. Tom, can you talk a little bit about like how, exactly how that process works from those flight planners?
Sure. And we work with third-party apps like the IFD 100, I should say, works with third-party apps like Foreflight, Seattle FlyQ, Flight Plan Go, AvPlan, and then planning tools like Cloud Ahoy. But typically, if you're a Foreflight or a FlyQ user, you sit at home, you're working out your flight plan for either the flight later in the day or the next morning or whatever. You can get an approved clearance. You take that iPad out to your airplane. When you fire up the avionics master, everything starts up. And now, as Raul demonstrated at the beginning, we can push that send to panel button and squirt that flight plan right into your panel mounted box. You don't have to interface with it and load an entire flight plan that you've already spent all this time on your iPad maybe building. It goes right into the box, and then you're off and running, and then it all of a sudden starts sending position back to the Foreflight to let you know that it's getting position updates as you cruise along. So it's super easy to use. The automation is amazing these days.
So I've had some questions come in that have some confusion about how the two apps versus the panel mount unit itself. So could you explain, is it the actual is it the third-party flight planners that send straight into the units in the panel, or does it go through essentially the IFD 100 app, which is basically a complete reproduction of those panel mount navigators within iPad?
No, the Foreflight works independent of the other iPad apps, the IFD 100 in this case. Foreflight communicates directly on the Wi-Fi channel to the panel mounted AeroNav in this case. And then if you want to launch the IFD 100, it'll set up a communication link and operate independently of Foreflight. So if you have dual iPads,
communicating with the panel itself, you don't have to go through the IFD 100. Because when I fly with it, I think of the flight planning and the IFD being a little bit separate there, because obviously there's just so much you can do on some of the whatever anyone's favorite iPad EFB app is to do all your flight planning either airborne or before you fly, and that can just get shot right into your avionics.
Right.
And
yeah, it's
to
pretty
kind of expand upon Raul's earlier comment about the partnership with Bendix King and Avidyne, is that our systems have open architecture that interface directly with the Avidyne system. So when you do your pre-flight planning, you download your flight plan to your Avidyne system or your AeroNav system. That in turn, if you have an AeroView Touch system, which is our primary flight display, multi-function display, those all work together. In other words, the AeroNav downloads that flight plan or your flight planning to your AeroView Touch system. So that's another key thing I think we need to emphasize. I don't want to have too much confusion, but I think it's a very nice marriage between Bendix King and Avidyne.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so I also wanted to share a couple stories of kind of how we've used these. I mean, you know, it's so sad, of course, that there isn't an AirVenture happening this year. But last year, for anyone that did make it out there, knows that weather was a huge factor. In fact, the airport got shut down on Saturday due to thunderstorms. Sunday it was really tough getting in there. And when we were flying in the Bonanza with all of this equipment going, we had some real challenges in getting around that weather, and we had to figure out a reroute en route. And you know it's one thing to actually know exactly where you want to go and how to get there, and these navigators in the panel are very, very easy to use in order to do that. It's another thing altogether to try to determine where you want to go, especially when you need to reroute. In our case, we had determined airborne, IMC, getting knocked around. We needed to come up with where do we actually want to go that's going to be away from all this weather and spend the night. That means, you know, knowing about ground services, knowing about fuel prices, knowing about all the different things that go into that. And what we actually were able to do is actually Jake and I in the front seat were really working at just keeping the plane under control as we were getting some pretty serious turbulence. Ben in the back was able to sit there on the EFB and actually he was using FlyQ, figure out all of the you know, options, talk it over, make a plan, and actually send that whole plan through directly into the navigators after we explained what we wanted to do to air traffic control. Boom, all that got done. So it's pretty impressive that you can do that and hand off whatever amount of control of the navigator as well you want to with the other app, which is the IFD 100, which again gives you that ability to have whatever size display that you want. And on that particular topic, then it's interesting because we've got in the Bonanza, we've got a dual setup where we've got you know, a lot of screen real estate already there because we have the large navigator with the smaller navigator below it, and that you know, makes it easy to use those in tandem, and it's less important for us to have the IFD 100 in that situation. However, in the situation behind me with the Mustang that we're building, that you're going to have two pilots that can both use the front navigator by using the iPad and the IFD 100. And that's a pretty important part of our design, because even though this is kind of a yank and bank show plane to get out there and have a lot of fun with the Mustang, we're going to need to travel with shows to this, and it's a fully IFR capable aircraft. And that means that the rear seat passenger, which is a pilot in our case, can actually control the navigator right there, and that's part of our whole design to how to do it. And so key part of our decision making is the ability to have all of that work and use the IFD 100 to completely control everything about the navigator up front. I just wanted to get that out there because it's a couple good examples of how that actually works. So any things that you guys can add to that, and I'll start looking for questions coming in.
That's good.
I wanted to just point out the vast amount of resources that Avidyne has on this product. I know that Tom holds regularly scheduled webinars, and so I just want to put a plug in for that and show you guys some of the resources. So this is yours, Tom. So feel free to talk to it. I'll just tell me next slide. But
Sure.
go ahead and tell them about all the different resources that they have to be able to learn about how to use the navigators.
Yeah, sure. On our Avidyne training page, we have videos, webinars on demand, training videos, and links to all the training partners we have are available on the website. So if, in fact, if you scroll to the next screen, maybe, here's our webinars on demand, ones we've recorded. And while this is the Avidyne branded version, it's the exact same product with the Bendix King brand. So you're going to get all the same valuable training, whether it's the basic stuff like we covered earlier today, the advanced operation using the iPad in the lower left corner here, you see it, IFD 100, learning the trainer, learning the IFD 100, the setup pages. So a lot of good resources there. Scroll to the next one. We have a YouTube channel with videos with all the different lessons for, you know, how to go direct, how to enter a flight plan, how to edit a flight plan, how to load an approach, how to do the mist, et cetera.
And that includes the IFD 100 connection in that instruction as well, right, Tom?
Correct. There is an IFD 100 video specifically, and there's a video on how to use the trainer. So if you're thinking about the system, you can download that trainer that Raul was demonstrating there, and actually play around with it at home. If you have 2 iPads, you can do exactly like he's done here, and have the IFD trainer or the AeroNav trainer on one iPad, and have the IFD 100 on the other, and see how it would work in the cockpit.
So let's take some of the questions that are coming in on this, and you mentioned right there as far as having multiple devices. Are you able to mix, like have a phone and an iPad connect, especially if the EFB software supports both?
Yes, for the EFB, yes, the Foreflight, you can have it on a phone. The IFD 100 only runs on iPad.
Got it.
But
okay.
you can definitely do that. Have the phone on the Foreflight and have your IFD 100 on your iPad. It's great. Great point.
And I'll address another question that came in that had to do with integration with the AeroCruise 100. And so when we're talking about integration with an autopilot, we have to think about how the system actually is architected. So your certified system, all your avionics in your panel, that's what's talking directly to your autopilot. And
Correct.
So it's actually kind of indirectly that you do integrate directly with not just the AeroCruise 100, but any autopilot, because if you can actually control that flight plan that's going into your AeroNav unit, then that is automatically controlling however you have it currently set up, configured in your aircraft. That's doing whatever it needs to send that tracking command for your course over to your autopilot. And so the answer is yes, but indirectly, can your iPad integrate directly with your autopilot? Another question that came in, Tom, this is a good one for you, or Raul, whichever of you, that has to do with subscriptions. Can you explain how your data subscriptions work, not just with the main unit, but actually when it comes to the IFD 100?
Yes. If you'd like me to handle that one, Raul, I'll
Sure,
jump in. We partnered with Jeppesen, so we've got subscriptions for the nav data, which you want to keep updated if you're flying IFR every 28 days. They've also baked in the obstacle database with that. There's a charts database. If you've got the larger screen version, you can get approach charts and airport diagrams. That's not available on the smaller screen version, but you can set up a subscription through Jet that even though this configuration you're seeing here, you're not going to show the charts on the small box in the panel, but you can still have the charts on the IFD 100 on your iPad, which is great. Now you've got a big screen MFD with your airport diagram. Maybe you're in an unfamiliar airport, so they say taxiway alpha to taxiway kilo, you know exactly where you're at. It's geo-referenced. That's all on there. So all the databases come through Jet.
Or if you have an AeroView touch system, you're going to have the same approach plates and charts that's displayed on the multifunction display. So you're going to have redundancy between the IFD, and then you also have a panel mounted device with those charts as well.
Right.
Got it. Thanks, Peter. So another question is, one of the things that I really love about these navigators is the very powerful vertical navigation capabilities and how easy it is to just touch on the screen and tell it, hey, 5 miles before I get to the airport, I want to be at this altitude, or for this route segment, I want to be at this altitude. There's a lot of vertical navigation of altitude control that are built into the navigators. And one of the questions that's come in has to do with, can that transfer from your EFB, from Foreflight or from any of the others, and come into your flight plan? And hoping the answer is yes, but if the answer is no, is that something on your list?
It's a good question. I tried that just the other day with Foreflight, and I couldn't get it to do it, but I'm not a Foreflight expert. I don't know if you used it with FlyQ. Are you seeing that? I can't get it or to give you an answer.
I haven't. I was hoping that I was missing something, so perhaps it doesn't do it yet, but maybe we can put a vote in right now to have that come in and go into your route segments so that that vertical navigation is planned for in advance.
Yes. So you can assign altitude constraints to any waypoint in the flight plan. The VNAV won't fly coupled to the autopilot until you're on approach mode, but it gives you the top of descent bug and a chime if it's time to descend to meet your altitude constraint that you've entered. And it'll also give you the Boeing banana, which is your arc, right?
Yep.
Your altitude arc. So when you're going to your target altitude, which is really nice. That's computed in real time based on your current vertical speed.
So that's
so
what Tom's talking about there. We also answered one of those is you've got a green arc that's ahead of your path. You may be able to put this on the demo if you put it in a different altitude right now and then put it into 2D mode. And that is showing you where you're going to be when you get to that altitude. Is that correct?
That's right.
Excellent. Yeah, because I know I use that all the time. And so true, it won't actually go if you're putting like an altitude select into your autopilot, but it's really helpful for knowing what your altitude you want to be at. It's giving you that planning, that reminder, and it's also helpful because a lot of navigators, I know again FlyQ does it, can calculate on the fly what the most efficient altitude for you to be at is going to be based on prevailing winds and things like that and your time to climb. And so if you can recalculate that and then send it into your navigator, it's there to also remind you, what altitude you want to be at what segment, and it just kind of gives you those clues. You mentioned approaches, and certainly even when an autopilot won't couple yet, which is usually during the final approach segment, I love having the altitudes for each segment of an IFR approach be noted as part of your flight plan on your navigator, because that sure beats looking at a chart constantly to remind yourself, or your notes to remind yourself where you're supposed to be at that point in time. So all you need to do is tap actually on where you can tap on either the distance or you can tap on the actual altitude there in one of the blocks that you have there, either the magenta or the blue. You call it teal, Tom, and that'll allow you to put in an altitude. Now, Tom, another question that came in: is there any integration coming? I know that you can control your radios directly from the IFD 100. Is there anything that might be coming from the EFB side? But obviously, we didn't talk much about that. And controlling your radio frequencies from the iPad is super easy.
Well, you can again, as use the frequency nomination on the IFD 100. We can transfer frequencies across. I don't know if any integration with the EFBs to do that.
And one of the things I want to point out about that is, one of the things I like is having multiple fields up. You have the ability to configure all of these fields that are on your actual AeroNav and Avidyne navigators, and so you can have 2 standbys and 1 active, so that you can manage multiple frequencies. But when you do that, especially if you're using one of the smaller navigators, you are eating up a lot of real estate space to have that feature. What's interesting is with using the IFD 100 on your iPad, you can then increase the number of standby frequencies and manage them all there, and then nominate them and send your frequency directly through to the navigator. And that's a feature I absolutely love, because if it were up to me, I'd have like all the frequencies I need for my flight and just pick it and send it in. And one of the reasons that's so helpful is that if you look closely at the frequency, it tells you next to it what it is. So you don't have to remember what the frequency is. You could have a list there that actually says, great, I know I'm going to have this center, and then they're going to hand me off, or at least in my area, I know I'm going to have Boston on this frequency, and then I'm going to have Cape approach on 118.2, and then I know after that they're going to probably hand me off to talk to, let's say if I'm going to the Vineyard, and if I'm going to a local airport, Katama there, I'm going to have to make rapid changes to get through. And having all of that there and just tapping and swapping it in and being able to see what the frequencies are is incredibly helpful. And again, your iPad can become that scratch pad in order to actually do that. So that, hopefully that answers one of the questions out there.
Great point.
And the only other thing we have left here, since I know we're out of time, is just another vote coming in from another one of our viewers to you, Tom, saying, hey, transferring altitudes, he's going to be using this in the smaller form factor and putting it into his RV-10, beautiful aircraft.
Yes,
and,
nice.
And he wants the same thing I do. Let's be able to put our altitudes through. So I think you'll send that through to the developers, I'm sure.
Yep. I will. I just attempted to do it here on Foreflight, and I don't know if I did it right, but I will get an answer certainly on it, and we'll send that back out as soon as we figure it out. As soon as I figure it out.
So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for taking their time this evening. Hopefully you got a little bit of information. There's, whether you start from the top down with going to something like the Aeronav 910 and 900 units for an aircraft, or whether you start at the bottom up and look at what's the least expensive you can get a navigator into your cockpit, then you've really got quite a few options here. And even in the smallest form factor, one of the things that is so great is that you've got that still have the same kind of combination of touchscreen and hard button controls. And speaking as someone who has been bounced around a lot in IMC, that makes a big, big difference. And when you move to the smaller unit, the only thing that I'm aware of that you lose, even in buttons on that, I believe you lose like your vertical navigation control, or maybe it's the nearest button direct, but all the features are still there directly through the rocker buttons at the bottom. So a lot of features, a lot of real estate opens up. I know we've just scratched the surface, but feel free to send more questions through. And with that, Raul, do you have anything that you'd like to add, or Peter?
I'd like to encourage people to download the trainer and the IFD 100 app and play around with it and see if you like it.
It's all free, right?
No charge.
And contact your closest Bendix King dealer. Some of them are very well versed in a lot of these features. So they sell the Avidyne as well as our other product line. So ask them the questions too. A lot of those dealers are very knowledgeable.
Excellent. And hopefully, when the world opens up a little bit, we'll see you at one of the shows, and we'll see you. You'll be able to come over to the Bendix King booth, go to the Avidyne booth at the next time that we're able to be at one of those. And certainly, if I see you walking around there, I'd love to show it to you in whether it's the Bonanza or whether we're able to get there in the Mustang as well. With that, thank you so much to Bendix King, to Raul and Peter. Tom, thanks for joining us. Tom Harper from Avidyne. And good night, everybody.
Thanks a lot.